Welcome back. You're with 10's Morning News. Well, as we told you earlier, US President Barack Obama will travel to Australia in March on his first official visit to our country. For more on what this means for our bilateral relations, we're joined this morning by American foreign policy expert, Professor Brendon O'Connor from the University of Sydney. Good morning, Professor. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
This is really exciting news.
Yes, I suppose it will be. I mean, Obama has terrific charisma. Australians really warmed to him when he was campaigning against John McCain and supported him in massive numbers, more so than nearly any other country. So I think it will be exciting, and Australians, I think, are very enthusiastic about Obama still.
What do you think this means for our relations with the US? I mean, surely this would be seen politically as quite a coup for the Rudd government.
Yes, it will be seen as Americans care about Australia, that they haven't forgotten about us, that there's attention given to Australia. So it will allow for a lot of other discussions to go on top of the visit that will occur.
What do you think will be top of the agenda? Obviously the economy, because of the strategies and situation in the US at the moment. What can we learn? I guess what can Mr Rudd learn from chatting to the US President?
Well, I'm sure Mr Rudd will want to put some ideas on the table. That is his want. I think he'll probably suggest some things to do with global climate issues, which he's wanted the Americans to sort of fall in behind his ETS idea. Their own cap and trade legislation is fairly slowly going through their Congress. So I think that will be a big issue. The other issue will be some kind of regional agreement and pact that might build on APEC. So I think he's, he'll come, when Obama comes to Australia, I'm sure Mr Rudd will have plenty to say to him.
And what about Mr Abbott? How do you think that relationship will go, considering previous history?
Well, I think both the Leader of the Opposition and the Prime Minister will want to see themselves as men in the style of Barack Obama, kind of politicians that are energetic and charismatic, and I think just being near Obama has some benefits in that regard.
Now, Professor, we saw a very, very strong relationship between our previous Prime Minister, John Howard, and Mr Bush, the previous US President. Do you think we've got such a similar relationship with the new leaders now? Because there was a lot of criticism thrown at that relationship with the US during Mr Howard's leadership.
I think that was a fairly unique time. I mean, the only other time would be during the Second World War that there was that kind of closeness. And I think Howard made this calculation that Bush wasn't particularly popular in a lot of parts of the world, and it was a good time for Australia to get closer to the US. I think that moment is not going to be sort of replicated. Obama is very popular in a lot of places. I'm sure Mr Rudd will want to have that close relationship. Australian Prime Ministers tend to like being close to the air of Washington, but it's, I don't think, going to be as close. It's very unlikely to be replicated what happened with Howard and Bush.
Now, we heard earlier our political editor, Paul Bongiorno, speaking about the fact that it's seen as, I guess, the US is our cornerstone of security. Surely this is very comforting to know that the US is on the same page with security and we have that protection there.
Yeah, I mean, Australians are always somewhat nervous about that. There's a kind of desperately seeking Sam sort of aspect to our behaviour at times, that we're kind of needy in some regards to have attention, to have Americans visit us, because it doesn't occur that often. It's quite rare for a president to come. Bush came for a single day. Previous presidents like Reagan never came. So it is an unusual thing, and I suppose we're a little bit attention needy in some regards with our alliances.
And I'm sure we'll see unprecedented security during the visit as well.
Yes. I mean, I think people might be a bit more patient about this time. Bush came a second time for APEC, of course, in Sydney, and there was a lot of security, and I think there was a lot of controversy around that, and it was probably because of the nature of who the president was. I think people might be a little more tolerant this time, but I suppose some people caught in rush hour won't be very tolerant.
All right, thanks for joining us this morning, Professor. Much appreciated.
No problem.